The sirens had stopped hours ago, but their echoes still rang in Jayden's ears. His body ached from sleeping on the hard concrete, and hunger gnawed at his stomach like a wild animal. The neon glow from a liquor store sign flickered in the distance, casting eerie shadows across the empty streets of Compton. He pulled his hoodie tighter around his face, as if it could shield him from the cold and the world that had abandoned him. For days, he hadn't spoken a word to anyone. He didn't need to. People ignored him, and he returned the favor. That was the unspoken rule of the streets. Keep your head down, keep moving, and don't expect kindness. But tonight, everything would change. Footsteps echoed against the sidewalk, steady and purposeful. Jayden didn't bother looking up. He had long since stopped expecting help. Then, the footsteps stopped right in front of him. "You good, lil' homie?" Jayden tensed. The voice was deep, smooth, yet carried a weight that felt familiar. He slowly lifted his head, his tired eyes meeting a face he had only seen on murals and album covers. The hoodie, the chain, the intense but kind eyes. Kendrick Lamar. Jayden's breath caught in his throat. Even in his misery, he knew who Kendrick was. He had heard his music blasting from passing cars, lyrics that spoke of struggle and survival. But why was Kendrick Lamar standing here? And why was he talking to him? Jayden scoffed, looking away. "Ain't nobody good out here." Kendrick didn't move. Instead, he lowered himself onto the step next to Jayden, resting his elbows on his knees. "I hear you," he said after a beat. "World cold sometimes. Feels like don't nobody see you." Jayden frowned, turning to him. "You don't know what it's like." Kendrick let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Lil man, I know exactly what it's like. I grew up a few blocks from here. Used to sit on these same kind of steps, wondering if anybody in the world even cared if I existed." Jayden's chest tightened. He had heard about Kendrick's story, how he came from the same streets, how he fought to make something of himself. But hearing it from his mouth? It felt different. Kendrick studied him for a second before speaking again. "What's your name?" "Jayden." "Aight, Jayden," Kendrick said, leaning forward. "You listen to music?" Jayden shrugged. "Used to." Kendrick nodded, understanding. "You ever write? Like your own thoughts, your own story?" Jayden frowned. "What's the point?" "'Cause the world don't hear us unless we speak, homie. And sometimes, the only way to get people to listen is to put your pain in a place they can feel it." Jayden was silent. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. No one had ever suggested that his pain could mean something. Kendrick reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, beat-up notebook. He flipped through a few pages, filled with scribbled lyrics, then tore out a blank one and handed it to Jayden. "Write one thing," he said. "One thing you feel right now. No filter. Just truth." Jayden hesitated. Then, hesitantly, he took the paper. He stared at it for a long moment before pressing the tip of Kendrick's pen against it. His hands were shaky, and at first, he didn't know what to write. But then, something inside him cracked open, and the words poured out. "I don't got nobody. The world forgot me. But I still wake up." Kendrick read the words, then nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then, he did something Jayden didn't expect. He smiled. "That's real," Kendrick said. "That's where it starts." Jayden swallowed. He wasn't sure why, but his chest felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, he felt like somebody had actually seen him. Kendrick didn't leave right away. They sat there for a while, talking, about life, about music, about the weight of the world. Then Kendrick pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yo, I got somebody who needs a spot to crash tonight," he said to whoever was on the other end. "Somebody real special." Jayden's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Kendrick smirked. "You can't get to where you want to be if you don't got a roof over your head, lil man. I got people who can help." But that wasn't all. A few weeks later, Jayden found himself in a recording studio for the first time. Kendrick had heard something in his voice. Something raw, something powerful. "You got pain," Kendrick had told him, "and pain makes people listen." Jayden started as a backup vocalist for Kendrick's upcoming album. The first time he stepped into the booth, his hands trembled. But then he remembered Kendrick's words. "The world don't hear us unless we speak." Kendrick pushed him further, mentoring him through every step of the process. Late nights in the studio turned into early mornings writing lyrics. Jayden's words became sharper, his flow stronger. The pain in his voice wasn't just sadness anymore. It was strength. Months later, Kendrick surprised Jayden with an offer. "You ever thought about performing?" Jayden hesitated. "Like, on stage?" Kendrick grinned. "Not just any stage, my tour." Jayden's heart pounded. The idea of stepping in front of thousands of people scared him to death. But then he thought about where he had been just a few months ago, cold, starving, alone. He had nothing back then. Now he had a chance to make something of himself. The first night of the tour, standing in the wings of the stage, he could hear the roar of the crowd. His hands were shaking, but Kendrick placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You ready, lil homie?" Jayden took a deep breath, then stepped onto the stage. That night he didn't just perform, he told his story. And for the first time, the whole world was listening.